I only came to say goodbye. Why won't you let me in?
You know why.
Here's the detail that's been hiding in plain sight for 4 seasons. The monsters in Fromville don't break down your door. They don't claw through the walls. They don't dig under the foundation, even though they're strong enough to tear a person in half with their bare hands. Instead, they walk up to your porch, calmly, no rush, and they smile. And then they ask, politely, sweetly, like a neighbor who locked themselves out, to be let in. And here's the part that should change how you watch this entire show. They don't come at you as strangers. They come at you wearing a face you miss. They use the voice of someone you've lost.
It's Grandma. Come to the window.
They've got a mild hypnotic pull that whispers to the lonely part of your brain, this is someone you love. This is safe. Open the door. So think about what that actually means. In Fromville, the thing that kills you is not a creature. It's your own loneliness, your hunger for one familiar face, answered every single night by a monster that has learned to wear one. That's not a horror gimmick. That's the thesis of the whole show. And this week, the writers confirmed it in the least subtle way they ever have. They named episode 6 after one of the most famous novels ever written about loneliness. The Heart is a Lonely Hunter. They didn't pick that title for the mood. They handed us the answer key. So let's actually read the book, and then I'm going to show you that Fromville isn't a town with a book's name slapped on it. Fromville is the book, and once you see it, you can't unsee what's really hunting these people. Carson McCullers wrote The Heart is a Lonely Hunter in 1940. She was 23. And it is, start to finish, a book about people who cannot reach each other. It's set in a small Georgia mill town, and it centers on a man named John Singer. Singer is a deaf mute. He doesn't speak. The one person in the world he truly connects with is another deaf man, Spiros Antonopoulos. And at the start of the novel, Antonopoulos is taken away to an asylum. Singer loses his single tether to another human being. And then something strange happens. 4 lonely people in that town start gravitating to Singer. A teenage girl named Mick, who dreams of being a musician. A black doctor, Copeland, full of rage at a world that won't listen. An alcoholic drifter, Jake Blount, burning with politics no one will hear. And Biff, who runs the cafe and watches everyone. One by one, they come to Singer's room, and they pour out their hearts to him. They tell him everything. And here's McCullers' devastating trick. Singer says nothing. He can't. He barely understands them. But because he's silent, each of them fills that silence with whatever they need him to be. The doctor decides Singer must understand the plight of his people. The socialist decides Singer secretly agrees with his cause. They don't love Singer. They love the version of him they invented to cure their own loneliness. And Singer? Singer is just as lonely as all of them. He's not their wise savior. He's a man quietly drowning, waiting for Antonopoulos. So when word comes that Antonopoulos has died, that his one real connection is gone forever, John Singer goes home and kills himself. And the 4 people who built their whole sense of being understood around him are left with nothing. The book ends with each of them exactly where they were headed all along, alone. That's the key. The human heart hunts for connection, and the hunt is lonely, and it usually ends in nothing. Now watch what happens when you lay that book over Fromville. Start with how people arrive. Nobody lands in Fromville at the top of their life. The town fishes for people at their lowest emotional point. A family on the brink of divorce driving away from a dead child. A man running from something. People mid-collapse, mid-grief, mid-crisis. The town doesn't catch the happy and connected. It catches the lonely. Exactly the people McCullers wrote about. Mick, Copeland, Blount, Biff, every one of them is isolated by grief or rage or a dream nobody shares. That's the intake profile of the novel. And it's the intake profile of Fromville. Then look at what they do once they're there. They hunt. Every single resident is hunting. For the way out, for the meaning of the symbols, for the truth about the children, for an answer that will make the suffering make sense. They are lonely hunters. The title isn't describing one character. It's describing the entire population. And now the piece that should give you chills. The novel needs a John Singer. A silent figure that everyone projects salvation onto, who cannot actually save them. Fromville has one. He's been standing in the road for centuries. The boy in white. Think about it. He barely speaks. He communicates in fragments, in gestures, in cryptic signs. Everyone who meets him projects their own hope onto his silence. He's a guide. He's an angel. He's the way out. He knows the answer. And we were told why he stays silent. He tried telling Christopher the truth directly, plainly, and it shattered him. So now the boy in white withholds. He lets people fill his silence with whatever they need to believe. That is John Singer, exactly. A silent figure the desperate build a religion around, who has his own agenda, his own devotion, and who is not the savior they've decided he is. Fromville is not a town that happens to share a book's title. It's McCullers' Georgia mill town with the loneliness turned into a monster you can actually see. Here's the claim this whole video is built on. The prison isn't the creatures. It isn't the talismans or the rules or the tree line. The thing that actually holds these people is loneliness, manufactured, enforced, and weaponized. And I can prove the town is engineered for it. 3 ways. 1, the monsters. We started here, but now you understand it. The creatures don't attack your body first. They attack your need to be loved. They use the voices of people you'd give anything to hear again. They smile like a friend at the door. The single most dangerous act in this entire town is the act of reaching for connection, opening the door to someone who feels familiar. The monsters are loneliness given teeth. They are the lonely hunter's hunt, turned against the hunter. Every death by an open door is a person killed by their own longing not to be alone. 2, the town's founding law. When you arrive in Fromville, before you understand anything, you are forced to make one permanent, irreversible choice. Town or colony house?
Are you living in town or colony house?
Town.
You each have to say it.
Pick a side. And those two communities are kept apart by design. Separate governments, separate rules, separate hills. Boyd, the sheriff, has no authority at Colony House at all. You need permission just to visit the other half of the people trapped in your nightmare with you. Stop and think about how insane that is. The very first thing this place does to a frightened newcomer is split the community in 2 and make them choose a faction. Isolation isn't a side effect of Fromville, it's the Constitution. 3. Every weapon the entity uses is a weapon of division. The man in yellow told us, in his own words, that his favorite thing is getting the residents to tear one another apart. The lighthouse pulls in the broken and the grieving. Sarah only became a killer once she was isolated, on the outs, alone with the voices. The strategy is never a frontal assault. It's separation. Get them apart, get them suspicious, get them alone. And then they're easy. Put those 3 together and you arrive at the thing the town is terrified of. Connection. A genuinely united community, one that trusts, that refuses to split, that faces this together, is the one weapon the entity has never been able to neutralize. So it makes sure that community never forms. The prison doesn't need walls, it just needs everyone to stay a little bit alone. Now look at what the writers are about to show you. Because episode 6 is this exact machine doing its job, and they told us the plot in the synopsis. Start with Boyd and Jade. Jade comes out of his vision with the answer. He knows how to save the children. And what's the very first thing that happens? Boyd, his closest ally, the moral center of the town, refuses to trust him. The synopsis says it plainly. The 2 clash over whether the knowledge in Jade's head can be believed. So, at the precise moment the town finally has a thread of hope, the response isn't connection, it's suspicion. Trust severs exactly where it's needed most. That's the book. That's the lonely hunters failing to reach each other. Then Donna. Donna Raines has a heart attack. And I want you to sit with the poetry the writers are doing here, because it isn't subtle. Donna is the leader of Colony House. She is, functionally, the heart of one half of this divided community. And in an episode titled, "The Heart is a Lonely Hunter," her heart gives out. The community's heart fails. And Boyd, the connector, the one man who holds people together, starts to spiral in the wake of it. The glue is coming undone. Then Sophia starts what the synopsis literally calls a new game. Hold that thought, because Sophia is the most important piece of this whole puzzle, and I'll get to who she really is in a second. And then look at how the episode physically arranges its cast. Tabitha goes off on a desperate gamble, alone. Victor and Ethan break away to chase the settlement's origins, their own thread. Jade is isolated by distrust. Boyd is unraveling on his own. The episode doesn't bring these people together to solve the crisis. It scatters them. 5 lonely hunters, each chasing the answer down a separate hallway, which, if I'm right about this town, is precisely the configuration in which the entity always wins. So let's talk about the most dangerous seat in Fromville, the singer seat. The silent figure everyone projects salvation onto, who cannot save them, and whose fall leaves everyone more alone than before. For centuries, the boy in white has held that seat. But this season, the chair is being fought over, and that's what makes Season 4 different. Because Jade is now climbing into it. Jade has the answer in his head. The town is about to start projecting all of its hope onto him. He becomes the man who understands, the one who can fix it. And we know from his own visions what happens to that man every cycle. The town builds him into a savior, and then, when the hope curdles into fear, they tear him down. That's a singer's fate. To be loaded with everyone's salvation and then to collapse under a weight that was never really about him. And then there's the dark mirror, Sophia. In the novel, the lonely confide their deepest selves to a quiet newcomer who seems to understand them. Sophia is that. A quiet new presence people will open up to. Except Sophia is the man in yellow wearing a face, and her new game is to be the confidant who turns every secret into a blade. She is the anti-singer. Not a silent man drowning in his own loneliness, but a predator imitating one, feeding on the exact instinct McCullers wrote about, the desperate human urge to be understood by someone. Here's the honest caveat, because this is interpretation and I won't pretend otherwise. The writers might mean the title more narrowly, Sophia Hunting Hearts, or Boyd's Lonely Grief, or one character's arc. That's possible. But the reason I think it's the whole town is that the show's core mechanic, monsters that kill you by impersonating the people you love, was already a loneliness machine before they ever borrowed McCullers' title. The title didn't invent the theme, it confirmed it. And the warning the book gives us is stark. When the singer figure falls, the people who pin their hope on him don't just lose a man, they lose the illusion that they were ever understood, and they scatter into despair. So if Fromville crowns a savior this season and that savior falls, the book says the town doesn't rally, it shatters. But here's why I don't think this season has to end the way the book does. McCullers' novel is hopeless on purpose. It ends in suicide and isolation because her whole argument is that loneliness is the permanent human condition, that we are all, finally, alone. That's the book's verdict. And it means that to escape, Fromville has to do the one thing the novel says is impossible. It has to break the rule. It has to connect. And that reframes everything about how this curse ends. We've all assumed the way out is knowledge, that someone, probably Jade, figures out the trick, finds the door, says the magic word. But knowledge is exactly what the town has been chasing in isolation for centuries, and it has never once worked. Christopher learned the truth, and it destroyed him. Every Jade learned the truth and got torn apart. Knowledge, hunted alone, is the trap, not the key. The key is the thing the entity has spent centuries preventing: connection. Trust that doesn't break under fear. A community that refuses to split. So here's my prediction, and it's specific enough that you can hold me to it. Watch Boyd and Jade. The book says the lonely hunters never truly reach each other. If Boyd and Jade move past the suspicion and act together, if trust beats fear between those two, that is the show breaking the novel, and it's the first real sign the cycle can end. If they fracture instead, the way the synopsis is setting up, the cycle resets, because that's the McCullers ending. And watch the town and colony house divide. The synopsis already tells us that old, rigid wall is blurring. A truly unified town, no factions, no permission slips, no sides, is something the entity has never allowed to exist. The first cycle where these people stop choosing a faction and start choosing each other is the cycle the prison can't survive. So read the title one more time, now that you know what it means. The heart is a lonely hunter. The thing hunting everyone in Fromville was never the creature in the dark. It's the human heart itself, out there alone, hunting for one person who truly understands it, one familiar face, one connection that makes the suffering bearable. And every night, that hunt is answered. Something walks up to the door, wearing the face the heart is hunting for, smiling, asking to be let in. That's the trap, not the monster. The longing the monster exploits. The town doesn't need to kill these people. It just needs to keep them a little bit alone, suspicious of each other, split into factions, each one chasing the answer down their own dark hallway. A frightened person alone is already most of the way to being a victim. And the cruelest part of all of it is this: the way out has been standing right next to them the entire time. Every cycle. It's the person across the divide they were told to distrust. It's the ally they decided to doubt. The cure was never a door or a word or a vision. It was each other. And century after century, given the choice, they keep choosing to hunt alone. The children keep saying it, Angkui, remember. And maybe what they're begging the town to remember is the simplest, hardest thing of all. You were never supposed to do this by yourself.
Angkui.